if I'm
I see there.
Yeah.
And hello, everyone. Welcome to today's Q&A. And today we have Eric with us again. If you remember, Eric, we actually did a video on AP Prep, which is a 3PL. It's a prep center which will help you actually move stock into Amazon. And it's a really useful feature to have on the side if you're doing FBA as a kind of buffer. But Eric today is going to be talking to the new storage limits. We've seen a change in how many asin level limits there are and things like this, which can be very confusing, particularly if you're a newer seller or wanting to send in stock. How much can you send in? Where do you see your limit? So that's what we're going to be covering today. But Eric, thank you so much for joining us and looking forward to this.
Yeah, well, I'm looking forward to it as well, and glad to be a part of the broadcast, and hopefully I can be helpful with some of these questions.
Awesome. And hello, Brett and Hawks. How are you doing, Hawks? I must catch up with you again. I know you're in London. But Eric, I think let's start off with some of the questions that already came in, and then we're going to dive into all the questions in the chat box for those of you joining live as well. But Eric, can you explain what were the asin level limits, like the normal limits we had for a good period of time now? And are those gone? That's the first thing I think we need to clear up, is are those gone, and what were those to start?
Yeah, those asin level limits were something that Amazon put in place last year during 2020. And what they did is they limited the amount of a specific product that you could send into Amazon. And this was particularly relevant when you were launching a new product, because those limits were driven by sales velocity. And so naturally, if you had created a new listing and were just launching a new product, it didn't have any sales velocity, which meant your asin level limit was low. And everybody had to grapple with the fact that they had a 200 unit limit when they launched a new product. And then depending on what your sales velocity looked like, that limit could vary. And so everybody had to navigate that limit as it pertained to a specific asin. So maybe you have an account with 10 different products that you've launched. Maybe you have an account with 50 different products that you've launched. None of that really matters. If you're focusing on a specific asin, you had to think about and consider what are the asin level limits for that particular asin. And if you had just created one, you had no sales velocity. And so you were having to deal with that. If you had a poor selling product, you had to deal with significant limits. And even when you had good selling products, Amazon was adjusting for that specific asin what your limits were going to look like. And people were constantly running into Amazon giving them a ceiling that they would have, gone above had they not been able to. So that is what the asin level limit looked like. It was lifted. Our viewers may have gotten an email from Amazon saying, I found it funny, and I'll explain why I found it funny. But the very first couple sentences to the email were something like, we've listened to you, the seller, and we're responding by removing this asin level limit. And so I think a lot of people read that and then, went on to the next email, and I saw posted on forums and chat rooms all over the place, people celebrating that this asin level limit was removed. And I think in some sense that was good news, but in some sense it was bad news, and we can get into those details. But my understanding is that since then the asin level limit has been lifted.
Okay, and as we were actually discussing this prior, but are there now new limits for sellers? So the asin level limit's gone per asin, but now are there new limits, and what exactly are those? It's a bit scattered and it's more confusing than before. But if you could speak to those as best you can on what you've discovered so far on the new limits, the ones we have right now.
Yeah, I would love to. And this is why I think it was hasty for people to celebrate the asin level limit being removed as good news. And if that's all that Amazon did and it was isolated, then I think it would have been good news. But I do think it's more complicated. And just my opinion. I think that's to Amazon's benefit. They like it if it's a little more complex, because it's a little easier to miss the fact that what they've done, in my opinion, is really doubled down on upping the restrictions. So when they lifted ASIN level restrictions, they instituted what's called a restock limit. You can see this if you go into your shipping queue and you begin to create a shipment. It'll appear at the bottom of your Amazon Seller Central screen, and you'll see that there's really two limitations in place. The first is storage volume. That's not brand new, though. We're seeing that Amazon's putting the squeeze on sellers in a lot of ways with storage volume. So that's just like it sounds. That's a volume-based limitation that Amazon puts on your account. And much of it, not all, but much of it's driven by your IPI score. And so, if your IPI score falls below a particular level, Amazon is going to shrink your storage volume limits, and that's going to hinder you when it comes to storage volume. The second restriction that they instituted, which is the one that I've been seeing the most trouble with, many of our clients at AP Prep Services have been running into problems with the restock limit. And the reason for this is in many instances, the restock limit is pretty tight. And so it's not as low as 200 units, but we've seen it in many, many cases be 1,000 units. And the key feature of the restock limit is that it doesn't pertain to just one ASIN, it pertains to your whole account. So what Amazon did is they removed an ASIN level restriction, which only restricted you and limited you with one particular ASIN, and they put in its place a limitation that hovers over your whole account. And that is also driven by sales velocity. And what that means then is that there's the potential that your whole account is affected by that limit. And so when it gets tight, if you're trying to deal with multiple items, you're having to navigate that one limit that's a ceiling over your whole account when it comes to navigating various limits, various ASINs.
I'm thinking that maybe what happened is, of course, they're trying to minimize the amount of wasted space in these fulfillment centers. But what happened as a result of the ASIN level limit is they maybe had a lot of sellers sending in a lot of different products, but just under 200. So perhaps that's something that happened. It didn't solve their problem. And so now they've shifted to, this account-wide type of limit. But then, so from this, Eric, which sellers are going to be affected by this the most? And what would you suggest to them to, reduce the likelihood of limits, or just begin dealing with these limits to plan effectively for these limits?
Yeah, well, everybody's going to be affected by these limits. You can't avoid it. If you're selling on Amazon, you have Seller Central wide, account wide limits that you have to deal with, and they pertain both to storage volume and a restock. Again, if your IPI score is decent, then I don't think you really need to worry a ton about the storage volume restriction. Although I wouldn't take it for granted that your IPI score will always be okay. But that restock limit is one that everybody's going to have to navigate and everybody's going to have to deal with. And Amazon has published, you can look in your Seller Central at things that, what do they recommend you do to avoid problems with this? And the number one bullet they say is sell more inventory, which makes sense. That's good advice. And we'd all love to sell more inventory. So just to be clear, I don't want to be pedantic, but to be clear, this is all driven by sales velocity. So, if you've got 10 products and they're all selling really great, then they're going to lift that restriction. But if it's selling great, you're going to want to send in a lot more product as well. So what we're always seeing is that sellers are having to kind of chase that ceiling. And if Amazon lifts it adequately, then you're fine. But if you run into that ceiling, you're going to run into trouble. And if you have a couple, now here's the issue. If you have a couple ASINs that sell badly, it doesn't just affect those ASINs. If you follow me, it affects the limit on your whole account. So if you've got a couple poor selling products and that limit drops, then when you're trying to restock inventory for the faster selling products, that ceiling is going to hover over all of those units. So, Amazon says sell more inventory. It says request to have inventory returned to you by creating a removal order, or have inventory disposed of. So there's Amazon's pieces of advice, and I don't think that's particularly helpful. And that's why I think it's particularly helpful to work with a third-party logistics company like AP Prep. But
that was actually my next question. Is one of the primary reasons I wanted you on for this conversation is because that's one of your businesses is running a prep center. So how does that fit into this? I mean, my initial advice to sellers would be to focus. So as Eric is saying, if you launch like 4 or 5 SKUs, 4 or 5 products, and some of them perform poorly or have lower sales velocity, it's going to impact all of your storage volume and could negatively impact a really good seller. So keep it smaller or more focused in the beginning with one. If you're just starting, focus on one product, get that sales velocity up. And we actually did a video recently on a new launching method. I think 2 weeks ago, we posted that video, which really helped with sales velocity and these limits. So focus on that because that's going to boost your IPI, which will reduce storage limits. But Eric, I found a lot. I mean, I use your prep center and I found a lot of value in it in terms of flexibility, but also not feeling so much at the kind of at Amazon's kind of beck and call almost in terms of, do this with your inventory, remove it. And so I've got a lot of flexibility out of using your service as well, almost taking back power in a sense of sending in when I wish to. So could you speak to the sellers watching in terms of how your 3PL, how AP Prep could help them in terms of these storage limits, or when it would be best to use that?
Sure, I'd love to. I think you've put your finger on the pulse of kind of what I've thought about this. You do want to be flexible, and you need to be flexible, especially if you're selling multiple products. And what a prep center allows you to do, what a third-party logistics warehouse allows you to do, is to be nimble in regard to how these limits shake out, and the limits are designed to kind of ebb and flow with your sales velocity and with how your various ASINs are performing, and so they're difficult to predict. And not only that, but as we've seen, Amazon's changing these limitations all the time. So when I was on the program, I don't know, 6 or 8 months ago, when we were talking about this, you would ask me, do you think they're going to lift this ASIN level limitation? And I think I said I didn't think they would, but what I did say for sure was that they're going to figure out how to streamline and make most efficient their fulfillment process, which is what you alluded to a couple minutes ago. That's their goal. Amazon has said, we're not a warehousing facility, and so we want stuff to come in and go out, and we want to provide fulfillment for our customers and for our sellers, and we want to streamline and lubricate that process so that it runs smoothly. And so Amazon is going to always be making changes. If you're getting in the business of doing e-commerce through Amazon, you've got to be nimble because everything's going to change all the time, and you just kind of need to be ready for that. And so, what is Amazon going to do in regard to these limits 6 months from now or a year from now? We don't know. We can kind of posit our best guesses, but I think what we do know and what we are confident about is that they're constantly going to be imposing guardrails to try to streamline their FBA process. They've been doing that for years and getting better and better at doing that, which means the seller has to be nimble. So your mindset has to be one of flexibility, which you mentioned. And the 3PL center just allows you to have an on-deck weigh station that does provide warehousing and Amazon automation. And so exactly what you said is true. Now you're in the driver's seat, and Amazon, can change their policies as your account goes through different ebbs and flows with sales velocity, and Amazon's limitations rise and fall. You can bob and weave with that and not worry about your product because it's stored in a safe facility and it's poised and ready to go, and can be to an Amazon fulfillment center in a matter of days when you pull the trigger on it. If you try to get your supplier in China to hold inventory, or if you're trying to split an international shipment into two parts, I mean, it just gets a little crazy. And now your stuff is on a barge somewhere in the ocean or stuck sideways in a canal somewhere. And you're having to, you're just not able to really navigate things the way that you're able to if you're poised with a 3PL center.
Another thing I would just mention at this point is you're going to have some sellers are going to be asked to remove inventory, or you might need to actually place a removal order to improve your IPI. And I would do, if you do need to do that, I would do it before Q4. So now would be a decent time, because when Q4 comes, as soon as the fulfillment centers get busy, those removal orders can take months, literally months, and they come out in drips and drabs, like 1 carton, 3 cartons, 2.5 cartons. And
I'd love to speak to that if you'd let me.
Yes, please.
These things drive me crazy. And we deal with them through AP Prep. We're willing to navigate removal orders, but they're a mess. So you're right. We've had clients who pull 250 units from Amazon as a removal order, and it comes to us in 100 different packages. It's insane. And I bet half of those packages are plastic bags. They're poly bags. And so what we've run into is so often our client's product gets damaged. This has happened to me. I was selling a product that was like a $220 per unit product, my own account. And fortunately, I did a small removal order on 5 to 10 units. And Amazon took the product, slapped a label on it, and shipped it without putting it in any sort of box. And so I got these 5 units that sell at around $250 a piece, and Amazon had stuck a label on them and put them through UPS. And of course, UPS didn't wrap them in bubble wrap and treat them gently. So they were all damaged and stickered up. UPS puts 15 stickers on every single box. My point is that they just weren't resellable. And I had to find a way to deal with those. And so there are a lot of problems with removal orders. It doesn't mean you can't navigate them. And we're helping some of our clients deal with the need to create a removal order. But boy, you do not want to be dependent upon that. And if using a 3PL could allow you to avoid removal orders or avoid them more significantly, it's going to be worth the money saved and the hassle and the potential money lost. So it's a little bit of a bee in my underpants, this whole removal order thing, because Amazon is they frustrate me to no end with how they deal with removal orders.
Yeah, I think what you're offering is even more important for international sellers. Say you're selling in the US and you're not based in the US, it almost gives you your own warehouse there. It's exactly what it gives you. So almost more important there. And on removals, if you're ever worried about damaged returns, because remember, if you get a damaged return, even if just the packaging is damaged, that needs a removal order. It's unsellable. But one way of kind of working around this is if you go on Seller Central, you go settings, fulfillment by Amazon, make sure you turn on refurbishment settings. That will allow Amazon to attempt to refurbish items or repackage items and sell them as warehouse deals under your listing. So just a smaller tip there, but it is something that will help you lessen stranded inventory if you're okay with warehouse deals being sold under your listing. And then, Eric, I want to check our chat box quick. We had some questions come in already prior to the session, and thank you guys for that. But hello, everyone in the chat box. I see Paul, Brett, Paul, Alan, good to see you. Zesta, Marie, Carpet Ali, Sandrita from Panama, Brazil, Madrid. Hello, Sandra. Awesome. Thank you guys so much for joining live as well. It's awesome. And John says, let me try this. He says, hey, Dan, limits are dropping by the day, now down to 1,000, despite selling fast moving lines. So,
yeah, so this is the kind of thing we're running into. We've got clients who, so for example, I got an email from a client saying like, hey, glad to hear this asin level restriction is lifted. They requested that they have the remainder of their inventory sent in. And they said, maybe we'll use your services some point in the future if things change. And then less than a week later, I got another email back saying, like, trying to understand what was happening because they couldn't send in anything else and they were having trouble, and they're back to using the center. So I think there's just a lot of confusion and a lot of unknowns about this, and sellers are running into this kind of things that are coming up on here. I mean, look at that. Limits went from 5,000 to 3,500 to 1,820 in 3 days. And again, that's for your whole account. That's for all units that Amazon has across your entire account.
And Kati asks, I'm launching a new product with 2 color variants. Should I start with 1 color and after that add the second one? What do you think, Eric?
I think it's a great question, and it's very relevant when it comes to these limits because, again, the restock limit, see, previously the 200 asin level limit would have applied to every single variation. So if you launched 5 variations, you could launch 1,000 products. Now the restock limit, because it covers all asins, is going to hover over all of your variations. So what we've seen new sellers have, so if you're launching first product ever, typically your restock limit is 1,000 units, which means if you're just launching one product, it seems like you can send in 1,000 units straight away. But then you got to watch it real careful and don't expect that you're going to be able to send in anything anytime soon, unless you sell very rapidly. But if you just go to 2 variations, now you've limited yourself, or Amazon's limited you to only sending in 500 of each variation, because that 1,000 limit stays over them all. So, if this seller's asking about variations based on restock limits, doesn't mean you can't do multiple variations. You just have to take into consideration how the new limit applies across all of your asins.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I would start with 1, Kati, and then build up from there. Choose the best color based on sales in your market. And Jonas asks, sorry if this has already been answered, but as an international seller, my shipment will arrive in LA, and I see AB Prep are on the East Coast, and that's a long road and extra cost from the port. So this is a really common question, Eric. If you want to speak to this, I know you're based in Vermont, but if you want to speak to this, is that really a drawback? Because, of course, you could get different fulfillment centers. But what are your thoughts on this, on the prep center's location versus, where shipments arrive or have to go to?
Yeah, your location in the U.S. has nothing to do with your shipping out to fulfillment centers, because Amazon's going to accommodate that. So, if you're shipping from a facility in Vermont, Amazon's going to, require you to send to centers that are close. We almost always send to Hazeltown, Pennsylvania, or Somerset, New Jersey. And so those are locations that are close to our facility. Obviously, if you use a facility that's located in the San Francisco area, they're not going to have you shipped to New Jersey. So that you shouldn't really worry about. What's being asked about more is getting your product from China to, a facility in California versus Vermont. And I don't think it's a deal breaker. I mean, we have hundreds of clients, the vast majority of which are located internationally, and probably 95 to 98% of which ship directly from China, maybe India. And a lot of times their product will come through ports, and we're really close to ports in New York City and Boston. And sometimes product will come right in that way. And other times it does come across the West Coast. And all I can say to that is, work with your supplier or with a freight forwarding company like Freightos and get DDP quotes. So that's what we recommend anyways, is that you would work, with various companies or suppliers and compare DDP quotes. And so, it might be worth comparing with a particular supplier what your DDP quote looks like, to ship to the East Coast versus West Coast. I think you'll find it's not really that different. From an international location like China, they're looking at just getting it to the U.S. And I don't think domestic shipping is the bulk of that quote at all. So, I can't answer the question specifically with dollars because it depends on a lot of different factors. But I just know all of our clients, with maybe a couple exceptions, are shipping from international locations, and stuff's coming to Vermont quickly, and it's coming to Vermont well, and it's cost effective for our clients. So
Yeah,
that answers the question. But we're not the only 3PL in business, so be a smart shopper and compare what we're doing to what other facilities are doing. And we don't think we're the 3PL for everybody. That would be a little arrogant, but we haven't seen it prohibit sellers from using our facility at all.
yeah. For me, it's like it's a weighing up of pros and cons, but I like the way you do it. So once my goods are there, I can just tell you, hey, send to Amazon, and you guys literally take care of it. I don't even have to do the shipping plan. So I'm also factoring in like time to that as well. But on the other hand, you don't look at like suppliers in China and say, okay, which one's closest to the port, because that's a huge country, and there's road travel before getting to the ocean freight forwarder. So I don't think it's a deal breaker, but it is a common question. But shop around and then see what's for you, based not only on the distance, but the service you're also looking for. But I think you guys do a great job. And then Miriam asks, I was going to launch my first product, and Amazon sent me an email saying my product needs to be CPC certified and tested in a lab. I didn't know I needed that. And have you done that before? So Eric, have you had CPC type testing, lab testing done on a product before?
I have not. I'm not even sure what that pertains to.
It's the same on my end. I haven't had this exact thing done, Miriam, but there will be a certain guideline. In this case, I think it is CPC. So you would just have to have your product. There's two ways. The first way is usually the supplier, the manufacturer, would have had to have done these tests because they're distributing to the US or UK or wherever this test required. So they usually will have this. They often have something called a MSDS, which is a manufacturer safety data sheet. And that can also detail these certain things. But if it's something like cosmetics or something regulated like that, FDA type stuff, then in some cases, if the manufacturer does not have that, you will actually need to get the product and send it into a lab that can do that test for you. So those are two options. I would try with the supplier first, and then you will have to look at testing yourself if they don't have those documents, but usually they do. And Ellie asks, what are removal orders? So Eric, if you want to speak to that.
Yeah, removal orders are a simple way that you as a seller can pull your units back from the Amazon FBA system and have them returned to your business's home address. Now, if you're selling in the US, you need them pulled back to a US address. So you need to deal with whatever your US based address is, which is why Dan suggested earlier that having a 3PL helps that, because you can have your removal order brought back to your US 3PL and then they can deal with it on your behalf. And Amazon simply charges you 50 cents per unit to remove whatever you choose to remove. So, if you encounter unsellable products because they've been returned, customer damaged products, you can remove those. But if you have a slow selling asin and it's just kind of taking up your volume, if you're maybe creeping up on long-term storage fees, you can create removal orders and Amazon will return your product from the FBA system to your home US address.
Yeah, I wanted to note there that Amazon removal orders are actually really cost effective. Like they do it for a pretty low cost. Sellers often ask me, is it only 50 cents a unit? What about like the shipping? As long as it's to a national location, they actually will ship it at 50, like the whole thing is 50 cents a unit. And it's the same price if they go destroy that inventory for you. So having a 3PL, in my opinion, is just much better. Unless you have your own location or warehouse, then of course you could remove it there. And Sean asks, where can I find these numbers? And what do you think we can expect for new sellers starting their first product? So Eric, if you just want to revisit the first part of this question, where can people find their storage volume limits, etc.?
Yeah, you find them in your shipping queue. So you in Seller Central, you would go to your shipping queue, which is under the inventory tab, and you can't see them. I'll be honest, they're a little, you kind of got to click around to find them, because when you immediately go to your shipping queue, you're not going to see them. But when you're creating a shipment, they'll appear at the bottom of your page, and they'll have little carrots that you have to click on to open up. So there'll be just two thin lines at the bottom of your Seller Central page. One will say storage volume limits, I think, and the other says restock limits. And when you click the carrot, it opens up and it'll unfold. You know, the restock limits are based, well, both limits are based on category. So you'll see what your limit is for standard size items. You'll see what your limit is for oversized items. And then they break it down into other categories. You'll see what your limits are for footwear, for apparel, if you're selling clothing, that sort of thing. So I think you need to kind of start the process of creating an order before you're going to see those appear at the bottom of your screen.
When I go into the shipping queue, so you can actually go Seller Central, manage inventory, manage FBA shipments, and then it will open the shipping queue, and immediately at the very bottom, I can see that storage volume sliver. And when you click it, it's going to open, as Eric said. But that's where you can find it. And then Sean, on the new seller limits, it's not certain. We don't know a specific number on this yet. It's not like the 200 unit limit. So you're going to have to check within that section in the shipping queue. But Eric, have you seen a kind of standard across the clients you work with new accounts on their limits, let's say for standard size or large standard size being the most common?
Yeah, it's typically 1,000 units, and we haven't seen anything above 1,000 units.
Perfect. And then Kati asks, is there a difference on shipping cost when shipping to a 3PL or shipping to the Amazon warehouse? Eric.
Well, there's two ways to address that depending on what she's asking. So if the question is there a difference if I ship from China to a 3PL versus China to an Amazon warehouse, then no, because they're both based in the US. And again, when you're shipping from a large country like China to a large country like the US, I don't think, where it's located within the country is a huge difference. But if you're asking, as a seller, if you ship your product from China to a 3PL and then you request for that 3PL to ship your product from their facility to an Amazon warehouse, yes, there's a big difference in the shipping cost, because, you're paying, say you get a DDP quote to have your product shipped from China to the US to a 3PL center in the US, you're paying for sea or air shipping, you're paying for tariffs and customs fees, and all of that stuff is built into your DDP quote, and it's going to be pretty pricey. Now, when you request to ship from the 3PL to Amazon, like I said earlier, Amazon's going to determine what Amazon facility that you need to ship to, but it's going to choose one that's in close proximity to wherever you're shipping from. So the distance domestically is very, very small. And you get to use the Amazon partnered carrier rate, which is astronomically discounted. I was in UPS one time, and I got to be friends with the manager there. Actually, I was in the UPS store, which isn't owned by UPS. And that manager was kind of bragging about how he got deep discounts as an employee to ship UPS. And so I went in there, he and I were both curious. So I went in there and did a shipping plan on the computer at the UPS store and showed him what the price was for the weight. And he got so mad because it made his discount look like nothing. So Amazon does have amazing partnered carrier value when it comes to shipping. So, if the question is international shipping compared to the little shipping you're doing domestically within the US, when you ship from a 3PL to an Amazon fulfillment center, there's no cost. Obviously, you have to pay for that shipping cost, but it's significantly less.
And Catalan asks, do we know what goes into the calculation of these new limits? Each time I send a removal order, there's obviously new space, but that new space, because I've removed that inventory, kind of just gets chopped off again in a few days. So what do you think of this, Eric?
Yeah, I mean, we're grappling to try to figure out that exact thing. So Amazon has made clear, they've continued to make clear that these limits are driven by sales velocity. But that, to me, is a little arbitrary, or it's not concrete. I mean, they don't ever break down for us how their algorithms are designed to interpret sales velocity and then, show you what the specific limit is going to be accordingly. So nothing that I can find gives us any sort of window into the process that Amazon uses. We're just on the other end. We eat the sausage, but we're not really given any indication as to how it's made. And maybe that's good because it could be really convoluted, but I know it plays into Amazon's favor. That's what I know. I'm not a pessimist, but I just think that's the reality. But we know it's driven by sales velocity, and we know calculations of new limits. We know what we've tried to share about the changes that are taking place, but it's hard to give a helpful and kind of, it's not formulaic at all.
I would say on this, Catalan, I think it might be unrelated. So you are removing inventory, but maybe your IPI is dropping a bit at the same time, and that's limiting the amount again. But what I can see in the comments is everyone is saying that these limits are coming down by the day. So,
and because there's multiple limits, there's different variables. So like the restock limit is unaffected by your removal order. Well, the restock limit would be affected by your removal order because now the unit count's going to drop. But storage volume limits, I don't know, it's tricky. It really is tricky to understand.
And Helen asks, I sent in 4 boxes, 50 items in each. So 50 items in each carton. Items aren't selling well. Could I get 3 of those boxes removed, or will I receive the product back in various small boxes or in a more scattered fashion? What do you think, Eric?
Yeah, there's no way to recover those 3 boxes. I mean, the minute they leave your facility door, they're going to be received by Amazon and immediately redistributed to a ton of other fulfillment centers. It's typically what they do. So, if you send in 200 items, they're not going to sit in the facility that you sent them to. Maybe 20 or 30 of them are, and then the other 170 are going to get scattered all over the place, which is that's why these removal orders come to you in buckshot fashion, because they're coming to you from 50 or 100 different fulfillment centers. I don't know how many fulfillment centers Amazon has in the US. Maybe you do, Dan. But, Amazon is positioning all your products so that they can do prime fulfillment to locations throughout the US. So, if I order your product here in Vermont and somebody in the state of Colorado orders your product, Amazon wants to get it to both of us quickly and within 2 days. And so they scatter your product immediately, which means every removal order is going to have that same effect.
Amazon has 110 fulfillment centers in the US.
Okay.
Just looked that up. And
growing.
Yes.
Building them all the time.
Sandrita asks, and this is an interesting one, especially for AP prep, But how does it work if we use a 3PL to do FBM, which is fulfilled by merchant? Since the inventory availability of Amazon or my storage limits are less than the sales it could have. For example, using a 3PL, would that be done through any platform, or just how can that be done? Eric, do you offer that, or how do people use 3PLs for FBM?
Yeah, I want to understand the question. So we don't offer FBM services. We don't offer any kind of pick and pack services for FBM, Amazon fulfillment, or for things like Spotify or Shopify, rather, or Walmart.com. We've had questions given to us regarding that. So AP Prep doesn't provide that. It's kind of a convictional thing. I mean, even as a coach with Just One Dime, I'm always encouraging people to focus on FBA, and you kind of, in my opinion, you want to avoid doing FBM unless you have a very unique product under very unique circumstances. So I think using a 3PL allows you to avoid the need to fulfill as a merchant, because it gives you the flexibility and the ability to be nimble and to keep your Amazon FBA inventory active and going the way that you need it to. And then if you're selling FBA, you're going to be making more money and you're going to be selling more products. I just am convinced that that's always been the case and will continue to be the case. And so I don't totally understand what the question is asking, but you can find 3PL centers that will do pick and pack FBM fulfillment for you. And if you really want to do that, AP Prep isn't the center for you. But I guess I would step back and just evaluate why you're wanting to do that. Because to me, you want to lean heavy on what Amazon does through FBA, because it produces more profit and it produces more sales.
Yeah, and rather work those limits up than on the FBM route. The problem, I think, with FBM is just the high shipping cost of having, to ship out one unit to one customer.
Yeah, it eats where your margins.
Yeah.
And if you're having a 3PL do it, you have to pay that 3PL the cost to do it. So, I mean, 3PLs are worth the cost for sure to be nimble, but if you're then doing it to do this FBM fulfillment, and you're paying shipping costs, it just eats into your margins. So that's why I say FBA saves you profit. And there still are a ton of customers that use Amazon that refuse to purchase from merchants. I have a lot of friends that say, I only buy when it's fulfilled by Amazon.
Yeah, timing. I think timing on that point is important. I think it's becoming a much bigger factor than people realize. Like Prime's been around a while, so it's become a bit more known. But I'm currently in South Africa now, and some companies ship extremely quickly and the majority don't. It takes quite a long time, and customers will pay a lot more money just if that thing comes quickly, and customers will tend to buy more and more from that same place just because if it arrives quickly, that is a good experience, like instantly. And so you'll see that a lot on Amazon, even where, if it's being delivered in an FBM fashion in a couple of days, people will much rather choose the Prime option, even if it's a few dollars more, just for that convenience. So it's a much bigger thing than people realize. And then Sean asks on lithium-ion batteries. If you do have a product that contains lithium-ion batteries, do you have to be part of what's known as the dangerous goods program, or do you simply have to go through hazmat and provide the test reports, etc.? Eric, what is your stance as AP Prep on this as well, storing these goods, or what you've seen in regards to this with clients, or what they might need to provide?
Yeah, I don't know all the details on what Amazon requires specifically and there's different grades of ion batteries, and so there's not a flat answer to Sean's question. But I know, we move product that contains batteries all the time, and people sell them FBA all the time. So I think if it's kind of a standard lithium ion battery, you just have to provide like box labels accordingly. and we move it through our facility with no trouble. So I think it becomes more of an issue when you're dealing with more significant hazmat batteries that aren't just your typical AA's, AAA's, that kind of thing. But if you know more about the process with regard to, the dangerous good program or something, that might be more.
Yeah, in all likelihood, Sean, what will happen, the only reason this is confusing is because Amazon has launched something called the Dangerous Goods Program, which they will invite sellers to. And Sean, I responded to you in the group, but I was invited to that program. So many of you will probably be invited just via email. And if you sell this type of good, it's a good idea to obviously join that. That's the only reason it's a bit more confusing. How it generally happens is when you go to list this product to sell it, and it's FBA. So it can also happen just when you convert the listing to FBA, because that tells Amazon you're sending it to their center. And that's all they're concerned about. So at that point, it will enter a hazmat review, and you need to go through a hazmat review. We also have a video on that, but during that, you will select the list which says my product contains batteries, and you'll fill that out and then submit the hazmat review, and then they'll get back to you. But usually that's how this will happen. You'll pass the hazmat review and then be able to sell the product. The dangerous goods program is that's what's a little confusing, are those certain products? Are those all hazmat products? But I doubt it can be all hazmat products, because I've sent in products that don't have batteries, are not dangerous at all. Like, think of the least dangerous product possible, and it gets a hazmat review. So unless pretty much all products are in that program, that's why my inkling is that you will have a hazmat review. But if you can, definitely join that program. And Oscar asks, I'm launching a supplement in the near future. Is it standard to have my product picked up from my manufacturer by Amazon if doing FBA? And what quantity limits should I expect now as a new seller? So Eric, what do you think?
Well, I would say nothing's different because it's a supplement than any other product. So I'm not sure what Oscar means by having the product picked up from my manufacturer by Amazon. So Amazon isn't going to just pick up your product. You need to have it shipped to Amazon. And so you either need to create a shipment from your supplier to an Amazon facility and provide the labels for that. And that's where the limits cause problems, because if you run into limitations, then you're not going to be able to do that. So the other option would be to ship to a 3PL like AP Prep Services and then ask them to create shipments for you. The quantity limits for a supplement won't be any different than everything else we've talked about already in the program.
Yeah, for sure. So Oscar, no, they won't pick it up from like the factory or manufacturer. You'll have to list it on Amazon, create a shipping plan, and then send it in to the US Amazon Fulfillment Center if it's in the US, or to a third-party prep center like AP Prep. And then from there, you can send batches to Amazon. And let's see here. And you got it, Sandrita, Carl. Okay. And Oscar says, what is the cheapest way to ship my surplus of products to my warehouse, given the new Amazon quantity limit? So what do you think on shipping modes, etc., Eric?
Well, I'm not understanding what he's asking. What's my warehouse, I guess, is my question. Is he talking about the 3PL?
So I think
What
here,
surplus is he talking about?
so I think his like bulk of his products, if you're shipping that to an Amazon warehouse, Probably the best way to internationally ship, Oscar, is definitely ocean freight, like sea freight on the big ocean ships is definitely the cheapest way, although shipping costs are incredibly high at the moment, probably the highest we've ever seen. But that's definitely the cheapest. Don't ship by air. But that's what I would recommend here. And then you can ship to a 3PL or Amazon in the US.
Yeah, so if he's just simply talking about sending larger quantities to like a 3PL warehouse in the US, then I totally agree. Get whatever quantity that you're going to purchase. It's always cheaper to ship it's cheaper per unit to ship a higher quantity, and have those go by sea directly to that facility.
And drop shipping asks, as a new seller, is it a good idea to enter into a category of products where the major sales go to 3 to 4 brands, including Amazon? So that's also a common question: is should you compete where Amazon sells, etc. But drop shipping, the big thing I would say here is you want to avoid big brands. So if you've got like Nike in there, or these big brands, avoid that, because people are buying because of the brand, not because of the product or the product being better. In terms of Amazon itself, I don't have too much problem competing in a category where Amazon also competes, because they're a Goliath. They move very slowly. They can't change up products quickly or focus too much on what customers want. Often their products are very basic. The only thing you have to watch out for is price, because Amazon can buy in such huge quantity. So if it's a category that's very price sensitive and always looking for the lowest price, and they don't care about what you've added to the product, then I would avoid it. But I'd likely avoid that category anyway. So those are just some thoughts on that. And Kati asks, we went into this one. And Lazy asks, what's the limit now? So you can check yours under your shipping queue. Just manage inventory, manage FBA shipments. And at the very bottom, you'll see storage volume. And you want to open up those slivers, and it will give you more details on your limits now. And you got it, Sean. Oh, this is a cool one. So Kathleen asks, how is it best to pack units for 3PL storage? Amazon receives faster if it's case packed, and those are limited to 150 units per case. If we keep 10,000 units in a 3PL, can you pack them in 150 units on demand? So can you case pack, essentially? And how would you like to receive it, Eric, from a seller?
Yeah, in my opinion, the best way to do it would be to have them case packed in 150 units right out of the gate. It just makes it easier for everybody and a lot smoother. So I'm not sure why you wouldn't do it that way, unless your product is extremely small and the supplier is kind of refusing to do it that way. But it's hard for me to imagine a scenario where you couldn't have 150 unit case packs done right from the supplier, and even if they were banded together or something. So, I mean, I think at the end of the day, the answer is yes. We could case pack them into 150 units, and we would work that out with you as an individual client based on what your needs were. But it doesn't seem necessary to go that route, even if you're talking 10,000 units. But
yeah, send it to the 3PL exactly as you would send it to Amazon. That's definitely the quickest, easiest, most efficient, and it uses your supplier as a resource. Get them to pack it exactly how you want. You've kind of already paid for that, so make sure they do that for you. And Sean also asks about the new fees. So Sean, we're not going to dive into this one today, but I love that you brought it up. We could probably do like another live session on these and the changing FBA fees, what Amazon charges you. But for today, we'll stick to the new limits. And Bilal asks about wholesale. I want to start in the UK market. Can anyone give me some tips? So Bilal, I focus entirely on private labels. So I'm not like wholesale expert. But Eric, do you have any, tips or guidance on this part of the business?
Probably not. I haven't done anything with wholesale, what you would specifically call wholesale either. I do all private label and arbitrage. So, there's been times in the world of arbitrage where I've landed on products that I can get large quantities at a really good price, and I guess that would be considered wholesale once I kind of bleed into having large quantities with regard to that. But
yeah, and Bilal, it's actually interesting. It's coincidental, but I'll put this up. So Alan was or may still be here. Alan Urizar, you can see it here. This is his YouTube channel. And Eric and I know Alan well. We've worked with him for a long time, but Alan has done a lot of wholesale. So go check out Alan's YouTube channel for sure. Everyone go support Alan's channel, but he knows this stuff very, very well. So definitely the best source of info on that. And downstream, I am terrified to buy from Alibaba. Should I be? What do you think, Eric?
No, I don't. Sellers use Alibaba all the time, and with trade assurance in place and with the popularity of the platform, I don't think you should be terrified to use it at all. It's actually a vehicle through which you can safeguard your transactions. So if you do a end run around Alibaba and send a wire transfer to China or something, now that's time to get terrified because it's pretty risky. But if you're working through the Alibaba platform, there's a lot of protections in place.
Okay, and Kati asks a different question. It's really similar though. The shipping cost to your residence address is different to shipping cost to 3PL. No, this will be like if you're shipping from China to the US, whether you ship from China to Amazon directly, to a 3PL, or to a residence is going to be, it's going to be so close. There's going to be hardly any difference. And it really just depends where each one is. So no, there's no, based on the type of place, doesn't like make a difference to the freight forwarders on this. So it's really your preference based on your strategy rather than the type of destination. And then Jacob asks, my inventory, and Jacob, I'm assuming here you're saying the inventory you have in the warehouse in Amazon's fulfillment center is over my maximum inventory limit. And then he says, could this be a problem and what could happen? So that's really odd. I haven't actually seen that before.
We've seen it on a number of occasions, and okay. I can't answer this authoritatively, but I don't think Amazon has done anything to penalize sellers who are in that position. I haven't heard of anybody being charged a fee because that happened, and I haven't heard of anybody having their account at risk because that happened. It just means now you're, in the hole, so to speak, when it comes to being able to send more product, because you're going to have to sell whatever you're over the limit just to get back to where the limit is. And then you got to sell more before they're going to allow you to send in a shipment. So again, it's a bit of a mystery why this happens, but Amazon's altering their limits in such a dynamic fashion that you can have stuff, just being received into a fulfillment center when they kind of reevaluate your account's limits. And so if your limits go down and then they receive a bunch of product, you're going to be in excess of that limit. And so far, again, we haven't seen them impose any penalties, but
okay,
many sellers are facing that reality.
I would say personally, I'd say it's a great thing. It's like you've kind of snuck in, and that's what I would think.
Until they start spanking you for it, they might charge you $25 or $50 for that at some point.
So 80 says, I have 700 units of a product ready to ship, but I only have space for 300 at Amazon. Do I ship all to a 3PL and get them to forward 300 to Amazon? Or do I pay my shipper for 2 separate shipping locations, and I ship a bit to Amazon and a bit to the 3PL? This is a really good question, because this is actually something I asked you, Eric, when I was sending my shipment. But if you want to take it away.
Yeah, we get this question pretty often, and our consistent response, our advice, it's not the way you have to do it or the only way to do it, but our opinion is that it's better for the seller if they have all the product shipped to the 3PL and then allow the 3PL to ship domestically to the fulfillment center. So in this case, our recommendation would be send all 700 units to the 3PL and then just request for them to immediately ship 300 to Amazon. To have multiple international shipments complicates the matter and increases your cost. Where if you have one shipment going to one U.S. location, it simplifies it, it cuts down your costs, and you're not really losing any time. I mean, the 3PL we promise to turn around our requests in 1 to 2 business days. Usually, it's same day or 1 day, and it's like a 2-day delivery to the fulfillment center. So you're not going to really lose much time. So that's our recommendation, but you're free to do it however you want.
Yeah, I can vouch for that as well, because when I told you guys, ship to the warehouse, it's literally like checked in the next day. And I was like, wow, that's really quick. So don't worry about that. Like, oh, if I send to the 3PL, it's going to take like weeks longer. No, it might even be quicker, honestly, because you guys are very efficient on that process and who you use and the partnered forwarder. So no real time difference there for sure. And let's see this one. My shipment is ready and my supplier is sending my shipment to my freight forwarder's warehouse, and then the freight forwarder will send it to Amazon. My question is, what should I put shipping from? Okay, so what should I put as the shipping from address on Amazon? The supplier's address, or the freight forwarder's address? So basically, should my manufacturer or my supplier's address be the ship from address on the shipping plan, or should it be the freight forwarder's address? So my opinion on this is it should be your supplier's address. That's where it always just starts from, even if it goes from there to the freight forwarder, etc. That should work just fine in this case. But Eric, anything you want to add to this one?
Yeah, I mean, the freight forwarder is facilitating your delivery from the supplier to Amazon. So it's not like you're having it shipped from the supplier to the freight forwarder and then from the freight forwarder to Amazon, if I'm understanding the question correctly. So the freight forwarder is just they're facilitating the shipment. They're not actually receiving or sending the shipment. So I agree with what Dan is saying. In fact, I'm not even sure it's right to say that the freight forwarder has a warehouse. They're just handing it off and facilitating the whole thing. They probably have some sort of ability to they have a weigh station to kind of hold the product, but it probably isn't their own facility. So.
And Lucas asks, how long does it take shipping from China to the UK by sea? And when will I be able to track that order? So sea shipping, the funny thing is, like, shipping from China to the US or to the UK, actually a really similar timeline. So it depends which type of sea shipping you purchase, but it's probably going to be between anywhere from like 3 to 8 weeks, depending on this. Probably now it's probably a little bit slower as well, but your average is still going to be around like a month or so. But one thing I'll note here is the UK has a couple advantages. You can also send to the UK by rail. There's a big rail network between the continents, and you can also send by truck. But I've never done the truck one. I have done rail, but I haven't done the truck. But someone was asking me about that the other day. So you also have those options, like intermediate options. Especially, we've seen a big hit on cost and speed with sea shipping. The US has no way around that. But if if you do need a workaround, those are two other options for you, Lucas. And then you should be able to track that order pretty quick. Once the supplier or the freight forwarder actually ships it, they should provide those tracking details to you. But sometimes they can only provide you the tracking details of the end of the shipment. This is quite common. So they don't actually provide it for like the sea shipping. Once it hits, like let's say you're sending to the UK and it hits the UK port, that's when you'll get the tracking. And the same in the US, when it hits the US port, that's when you get the tracking. So that's also very common and not a problem. Then you can go into your shipping plan, mark as shipped. Well, you would have already marked as shipped. You can do that immediately, but you can go back in there and then drop in your tracking numbers. Okay, and this one. How are the storage conditions in the 3PL warehouses? Are there any special conditions needed for the products? We're using compostable, biodegradable packaging, which is sensitive to humidity, etc. What do you think, Eric?
Yeah, I can't speak for 3PLs across the country. Special conditions are needed for various products. So, our facility at AP Prep is temperature regulated. And so I think it's some of the better conditions you could ask for. Your compostable, biodegradable packaging would be fine in our facility. We're FDA registered, which means, we have refrigerated storage. We've got a whole bunch of stuff like that. So, but different 3PLs are going to be different. And so that's something to find out before you sign up. But I know at AP Prep, our conditions, because of the temperature regulated situation that we have in our warehouse, that your particular products will be fine.
Okay, and you got it downstream. Sean says, my supplier offers 40 units per carton, 10 cartons. Each carton is this size. Is it cheaper to send bigger cartons and like less bigger cartons, or more smaller cartons? And what's your opinion on that, Eric? Pallets or cartons only, etc.?
Well, he must be talking domestic shipping from a U.S. location to Amazon.
I think even on the big shipments, like across the sea, if it's packed like that,
yeah,
I think it's really going to be based on volume.
It is. So it's not really going to matter. And most international suppliers aren't going to palletize, so it's not an option. So I don't think it really matters. Even domestically, it's not a big deal when you ship to an Amazon facility. Volume will make a difference between whether you ship LTL or SPD, but that's a judgment call that, like, if you were working with AP Prep, we would, if it wasn't obvious, we'd probably defer to the SPD because it usually goes faster. But that's kind of a separate issue.
Okay.
And it wouldn't affect how you're packing your cartons. It would just be a decision you'd make based on how many units you were shipping to Amazon, if you follow what I'm saying. Yeah,
just volume based.
Yep.
So Sean, I would just set it up however's convenient for your, how your supplier wants to pack it. Just ensuring, what I like to do is ensure a case packed shipment. It's just quicker, it's received faster at Amazon, same number of units every carton. That's what I'm looking to do. So, but I'm not looking at, bigger or smaller cartons or pallets. If possible, just pack the cartons and ship like that is usually absolutely fine. Okay, and let's see here. If I have active listing items sent to a 3PL, can I use current FNSKUs? And how would I get new FNSKUs for a new product if I ship directly to a 3PL? So what do you think on this, Eric?
Well, ideally, you'd have your supplier affix the Fnsku to your customized packaging, and then you don't have to worry about it. It comes into the 3PL and it goes out to Amazon, and the 3PL doesn't have to do anything with it. So that's what I would recommend. If you're using AP prep services and you need them to affix Fnskus, we can provide that service for you, or Amazon can provide the service. You can pay Amazon to do it. But you wouldn't need to get new Fnskus unless you created a new listing. So as long as you have the same listing for the same asin, your Fnskus aren't going to change. Get the supplier to put them on your packaging.
Yeah, 100%. Use the supplier. They'll do this for free as well. So just say, hey, this has to go on every single item. I also recommend, say you are creating your products in China, get your FNSKU and have them add made in China just at the bottom of it. And that's one label, fulfills two purposes on every single product, regardless of how it gets to Amazon. It's done at manufacturing. And Judy says that my freight forwarder said that shipping costs have increased. Do you see higher shipping costs these days? 100%. Definitely a trend. Eric, can you speak more to that? What are you seeing? I don't know if you have like cool percentages or what you've heard of in the industry, but I know it's gone up.
We don't see it in the prep center because it's the sellers are dealing with that. So as a seller, I'm seeing it, and it's all related to COVID. So whether those costs are going to recover now that we're, hopefully moving out of this pandemic season or not is still to be determined. I don't think they'll ever go back to what they were. Just doesn't usually trend that way. But I'm hopeful that a year from now, it's not going to be as expensive as it is now. But I absolutely agree. The answer to the question is yes. You're muted.
Thank you. So this is a very cool one. And I also wanted to note at this point, I'm going to drop a link below, 2 links below. One is going to be to our prior video on AP prep, exactly how to use it, etc. And 2, a link to AP prep if you do want to go sign up with them or check out what they do. But Sandra asks, I signed up with AP prep and have a shipment almost ready to leave China. Do I need to give AP prep a tracking number so they know when to expect arrival? So how does that work, Eric? Once someone signs up with you, okay, they get everything ready and they're about to ship to you, what happens now?
Yeah, it's helpful. If they can send us tracking information, it's very helpful for us to be able to anticipate a shipment. What is probably more important than tracking information would be just a detailed breakdown of like what's the product description, what's the Fnsku and the asin for the product. Is it one product in the shipment? So, we're happy to receive shipments with multiple asins, but if you can tell us ahead of time, not only the tracking information, but these are the 3 asins you should expect. This is the quantity of each one. There's 100 cartons in the shipment. Each carton contains 20 units. All that information is very helpful for us when we receive the shipment and are, doing a product count and stuff like that. So tracking is helpful, but those other details, I would say, are even more helpful.
Awesome. And can you drop your web address in the chat quick, Eric? I don't know I think you can post a comment here, but post it there. I will drop it below the video. We're going to close up in a moment. I'll drop it for you so you can all get it. But if you quickly want to add it there.
It should be there.
Okay, and then I don't see it yet, but we will drop it.
All right, I posted 2 in the chat, assuming I'm doing it right. The first is our general web address, and the second is the account setup address. But I put them right after Mustafa's question.
Okay, perhaps it'll come through in a moment. And does the cost of using a 3PL depend on the type of product or on volume, size, weight? What is the cost of using a 3PL based on primarily, Eric?
Again, I can't speak for other 3PL facilities, and I don't know whether we all do it the same way or not, but ours is based on pallet size, so it's going to be volume. It's not weight, and it doesn't matter what kind of product you have, but we try to keep our fee system as simple as possible. And so our storage fees and our ship to Amazon fees are all pallet based. So, whatever fits on a pallet, or however many pallets are required for your shipment, is going to determine what your storage costs are. Pallets 48 inches by 40 inches and can't exceed 60 inches in height.
Yeah, and we also did like a whole cost breakdown. I remember we went like super detailed on what it would actually cost to do it. In the video, I'm going to link below this, Sandrita. So I'll add that straight after this as we close up.
Yeah. And even though other costs are increasing, none of our costs have changed since we did that original video.
Yeah, and Mustafa says, how does it work when someone returns an item, and how do you handle that? So Mustafa, on Amazon, if someone returns an item, which I think is what you're asking, if it's still sellable, it's usually just going to go back into your inventory and the customer's refunded. If it's damaged, it will be put in your unsellable inventory and you'll have to remove it or pay for it to be destroyed. And in some cases, if it's slightly damaged, like the package is damaged, then Amazon will refurbish it and sell it as a warehouse deal under your listing. And last question for today. Would we have a problem with space in Q4, which is quarter four? How is space allocated, and do we get priority if we are current customers? So this is obviously regarding AP prep, Eric. So say you start filling up towards Q4. Do you have some type of grandfathering system, or how does that work?
Yeah, I don't anticipate that we're going to have problems with space in quarter four. We have a 93,000 square foot warehouse. Though we've had a lot of clients sign up. So if you set up an account with us, it does prioritize you because it assures you warehouse space. So what I would suggest is to get your account set up, and then when you have product shipped to us, we're going to take care of it. So
okay,
won't be a problem.
Awesome. And I'm sure if it really got to that point where it's really getting tight, then you would obviously stop onboarding to retain space. But thank you, everyone who joined us live. Lots of thank yous in the comments here, Eric. So thank you very much for joining and answering and sharing this info with everyone. We will drop a link to AP Prep below, and to the video where we break it down in a lot more detail as well for you. But Eric, thank you so much for joining us. Any last advice or words you want to give to everyone?
I just think that the general attitude you want to have as an Amazon seller is, one of optimism and overcoming obstacles. And so I still think, I have my frustrations with Amazon. You probably heard a couple of them as we talked here, but I think, it's a huge privilege to be able to sell on the Amazon platform. It's by far the most popular e-commerce platform that exists today. And, my business is what it is because Amazon has allowed that to happen. So they're not doing it out of charity. They're getting quite a benefit for it as well. But I think what I'm just saying is, as an Amazon seller, it's a great opportunity to advance my own business using Amazon. And so I put a governor on my frustrations. I vented a little on removal orders and other things, but those are pretty small issues overall. So when you're navigating things like changing limits, be a seller who's willing to tackle and overcome obstacles, and that will cause you to stand out above other sellers who are unwilling to do so, and maybe even quit. And if you do that, your business is going to prosper. And if you're working with Amazon and doing the best you can to move it forward, I don't see why you can't have great success. So I just think that mindset's really important. And if you need to use a 3PL to stay nimble, use AP Prep. We'd love to have you on board. But whatever you've got to do, figure out how you can navigate limits and obstacles and things that are posing themselves as challenges in order to move your business forward. And you'll be glad you did a year from now.
Yeah, for sure. And I can definitely vouch for AP Prep. I've used their services. I know Eric really well. That's why I enjoy having him on here. I know he knows his stuff. I know he does a really good job with his team there. So definitely check them out. If you guys do need a 3PL, I'll drop a link below this video straight after here. We can close up. I'll drop the links for you. But thank you so much for joining. Thanks again, Eric. And we will catch you guys in the next one. Bye, guys.
See you later.